Good afternoon and welcome to the Living Well program. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also listen live online at katb.org. You can also find us on our Facebook page at Living Well Radio or download the podcast available on iTunes. And you know what? I always forget, Betty, but we're also on YouTube.
Yes, we are.
So would you call yourself a YouTuber?
A YouTuber. Isn't that a funny name?
It is.
We're YouTubers.
I never thought of it that way, but you know what? It's official. I got to add that to our intro statement.
We're officially YouTubers.
Anyhow, boy, do we have a fun show prepared today. We were just honored at the opportunity to be invited to Cornerstone Women's Ministries event called, tell us the name, Betty.
Oh, dear. RV There Yet.
That's right. RV There Yet. They are so creative with their names for their women's events over there. It just makes you want to go to find out more about it.
And they're always so much fun.
They are so much fun and so welcoming. But they were just talking about hospitality and giving great tips, practical ideas.
How to meet your neighbor.
How to meet your neighbor. Who would think that we needed a tip on that these days? But I'll tell you what, I do. And
Me
maybe
too.
you do too.
I do too.
So anyhow, we joined them over there and had a great conversation just discussing these things and just sharing, you know, faults and flaws and ideas.
And they had homemade marshmallows.
Oh, did they ever?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Wonderful.
Still
S'mores
music
flavored.
running in case you're enjoying that. Those marshmallows were fantastic.
They were.
And same with the dessert, the Golden Grams dessert,
Yes.
which they did post the recipe on their Facebook page. So
I
if you
saw
want
that.
to check that out, look up Cornerstone Women's Ministry. But for now, we are just going to kind of let you listen into our conversation that we had with, again, Cornerstone Women's Ministry over there at their event, RV There Yet. So stay tuned for this half hour and just enjoy this conversation. There should be a part 1 and a part 2.
That's right. Part 2 was their food demonstration, but they did a great job.
Yes, we're hoping to be able to post that. So we'll see. But for now, we definitely have got part 1 prepared for you. So please enjoy. And we thank you so much for joining us here on Living Well.
What kind of started this whole idea behind doing this RV There Yet thing is we had met with Betty and Cammie, and they had met a lady that wrote a book called The Turquoise Table. Have any of you heard of that, or the concept behind the Turquoise Table? So that's kind of what got this whole thing going. And so while we definitely went with the campy theme, we're not trying to teach you guys how to camp. We are going to give you some hacks that will be helpful, but the idea behind this is we want to remind you guys that we're supposed to be hospitable, that we're supposed to be in community, that we're supposed to be engaging the people that are around us. And so we're just going to have a little open discussion right about now. Hi, everyone. Hello. Everybody's mics on? Check, check. Listen, we wanted to light the fire, but
they wouldn't let us.
We have a ventilation problem.
We'll pretend. Oh, that feels so good.
So good.
Put your feet up there on
Sparks burning your pants.
The best part is hearing it pop and crackle.
Yeah, so
smell.
relaxing. Excuse me. Are you?
I have to start?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Boss is around.
Well, I guess the first thing I think about is, so for those of you who may not know, by trade, I'm a dental hygienist. And inevitably, every summer, I get kids through my chair, and I ask them, so when was the last time you brushed? And much to their mother's dismay, they're like, I don't remember. And the mom's over there mortified. She's like, I told them to brush this morning. But they get out of their routine. They don't have a schedule. They're not going to school, so they don't really have a bedtime. They're getting up at odd hours. And so, I always tell them, well, let's think of something that you are doing. You're still taking a bath, right? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay. So let's link something that we know you need to be doing. You still need to be brushing. And let's link that with something that you are doing. So every time you take a bath, you have to remember to brush your teeth. And I guess I kind of think of that the same with us in our schedules in the summer. We get out of routine, and our schedules also kind of go out the door. But we, too, still have a mission. We still are called to be the hands and feet of Christ. and to be hospitable and neighborly. And so we just need to find creative ways to link it to something that we're already doing. So whether that's gardening or fishing or camping, I know for a lot of us we're weekend warriors. And so we just need to find ways to incorporate that into what we're doing, because we still need to brush.
Well, we've done a couple of shows lately on hospitality. We've read the book, The Turquoise Table, and we've actually had the privilege of interviewing the author, Kristen Schell. And she has a phrase in her book. It's called the Ministry of Being Present, the Ministry of Presence. And it's, honestly, girls, it's no more than when you're talking to somebody, you're actually listening. You're not thinking about, oh, I got to check my phone, or, oh, is dinner ready, or whatever else is. We're actually there, and we're actually paying attention, and we actually care about what they're saying. And I think as far as hospitality goes, that is a very important aspect, that we really listen. You know, you've all seen people, you'll meet them in the hallway, hi, how are you? And they're looking already down the hallway at the next person they're going to talk to. You know, let's try to stop that. Let's try to take just a minute and look in their eyes. And, you know, they might say it's terrible. You know, I feel terrible. Well, then you got to come up with something to say. But, you know, actually, you know, why can't we do that? Why can't we just take a minute and say, really, you know, what can I help you with? Can I pray for you? Can we just take a minute and pray together? Mm-hmm. So that would just be a way of being neighborly. Maybe, I don't know if you would call that hospitable or not, but I think it's a very important part of it.
Yeah. Can one of you kind of give a synopsis of the book, The Turquoise Table, for those that don't know what we're talking about when we say the turquoise table? They're like, I don't have a turquoise table.
It's a great book. First, girls, it looks pretty. It looks pretty. Second, it's an easy read. It doesn't take you don't have to sit and think what that word means or what she's talking about. You'll know as you read it. And it's full of ideas of ways that you can be neighborly, of different ways of meeting your neighbors. And she also has, I don't want to give it all away because I'd like for you to read it, but she has these great ideas of moving your life, your outdoor life, to your front yard. I think it's actually hashtag front yard people. Front yard people. She has a great website and a Facebook page. I highly recommend that you read the book. It's really, really good. What else, Cammie?
Well, I think that's a good summary. I mean, essentially, if you think about all of the entertaining that we do amongst our own families, or even when we do have people over, it's in the backyard, which is in the boundaries of a fence. And while that makes common sense to us in our culture, her whole movement is really the front yard people. So whatever you're doing in your backyard, and it feels... I can't say I've done it yet, except for I will share this quick story. Last summer, we're putting together this trampoline, and we're doing it in the front yard, and, eventually days are going by, and I'm looking at that thing, and neighbors are kind of coming by. Their kids are joining my kids on the trampoline. I thought, oh, no. This thing has to stay in the front yard, because we were reading the book at the same time. So conviction, this is my turquoise table. And so that's really what it comes down to, is just moving something to the front of your home to invite that community. And it's amazing how it just kind of naturally takes that on.
And I'm going to be honest. I don't want to be, but I will be. I have no problem inviting people into my home. I have people in my house all the time. But in my front yard... that's tough for me. Candace mentioned that my husband passed away. Girls, he was the one. He was the social one that went out and met our neighbors and would come to me and say, Betty, do you know so-and-so? Or, Betty, have you heard so-and-so? And that was his job. Maybe I can use that as an excuse. Does that work?
No.
No.
Wrong-o.
God, you took him. But anyway, when they invited us to do this, I got convicted because I don't do it. And I can't sit here and tell you to do this and do this if I'm not doing it. So I've been looking for chairs that I can easily pull out in my driveway. I've got my fire pit to put out in my driveway. I'm looking for small tables that I can move around easily. And I have a plan. So I will become a front yard person here real soon.
What you said, Betty, about listening, it came to mind, and I know Camille will have heard this too, is that listening with the intent to understand, not the intent to respond. And so I think that's the majority of, sadly, my conversations is that, we're like, oh, yeah, I got input with that. Oh, yeah, I totally connect with that. Listen to my story about that. But how often do we truly sit back and just listen to understand what that person is saying and to really take it to heart? And then also and I'm sure we've all heard this phrase, it just kind of seems to be popping up everywhere these days, but is living with intentionality. And just what you're doing, you're thinking and like going through your mind, okay, I need to do this. What are the things that I have available to me to make put myself there for the world to help and to be a part of, and that really intentionality and really thinking. And I know I've done that since we started talking about this conversation too. Is just like, what are the things in my everyday life and the people that I have contact with that I've had contact with for years, and how am I intentionally working to reach them? And it is pretty convicting when you really start praying about it and praying for it. Even on the way here today, I was like, all right, Lord, if there's somebody there that I should be connecting with, like bring them to me. Really asking God to do that and put them into your circle wherever you're gonna be. And that's kind of scary, actually, to ask for that.
It is scary when God asks you to get outside your little box, your comfort zone. I am not by nature an outgoing person. I would much rather sit in my little chair and pretend like there's nobody else around me. But that, girls, that's not what God tells us to do. His command is for us to go. And so we as women of God, we need to be prepared to do just that. I would encourage you, if you're not already reading God's Word, to set time every day to do just that, so that you are ready when God brings that woman to you, because I'm going to tell you it's going to happen. It's just going to happen. So you need to be prepared with some of God's wisdom to impart on them.
I was just going to share, just kind of on the basis of that, the Turquoise Table, one of the points that she makes is that there's a difference between entertaining people and then being hospitable. And I really liked understanding the difference, because we all quickly reference, I love to entertain. But do you love to be hospitable? And that's really where the challenge is. And that goes back to what you were saying, Betty, of the ministry of presence and truly sitting there and just really listening and letting women talk and share, and just making that the challenge.
And I kind of want to segue onto what Betty was saying about it being scary. And I share this story to encourage you in that, because we have gotten away as a culture, we've gotten so far away from being hospitable and neighborly, that it's also scary on the other end for our neighbors. So in life group one time, we were being challenged to be hospitable. And so we had come home, and so my husband and we had said, well, you know what, let's invite Cliff and Linda, they were our next door neighbors, let's invite them over for dessert. And I think dessert's good because it's not a meal, so it's not as intimidating. And so we're like, let's invite Cliff and Linda over for dessert. So it was the middle of winter, and so I called them up. Cliff answers the phone. I'm like, hey, Cliff, it's Camille from next door. I wanted to know if you and Linda would like to come over for dessert. And the phone kind of got silent. And he's like, for dessert? And I said, yeah. And he's like, hold on. Next thing I know, Linda gets on the phone. So Cliff said you want us to come over for dessert. And I said, yeah, I was wondering if you guys would like to come over. And she's like, okay. So I'm pretty sure they thought we were going to sell them something. So long story short, they came over. We had a great time, but they weren't used to it. And we weren't used to inviting people over. And so if you invite someone over and you don't get a big enthusiastic, yes, we would love to, don't be discouraged and don't think that they don't want to come. It's just, I think in our culture, we just don't do it enough. So every subsequent visit since then has been great. But that first one, it was awkward for all of us. So don't be afraid, and don't take a hesitant yes as a no.
One of the other things, did I just pull the thing? Sorry about that. One of the other things we had talked about was, for about 9 months out of the year, we're all locked up in our houses. There's the occasional diehard, Lori, I'm looking at you, that'll get out and ride your bike and stuff in the wintertime. But for the most part, we're pretty locked down in the winter. And so this is the time to kind of seize the moment and seize the opportunity. Everybody's coming out of hibernation, and there are your neighbors that you may have lived in the same hood with for 10 years. And you're like, I still don't know their name. And so just start with that. Just start with learning their name. When we get new neighbors in our neighborhood and I meet them, I go to the fridge and write it on the white dry erase board, and it stays there for 6 months or a year until it is memorized. And so every time I see them, I'm like, hey, Greg, hey, Maggie, instead of being like, hi. To say their name makes them feel like, oh, okay. And then they kind of reciprocate with either, I can't remember your name, or then you tell them their name and suddenly they start remembering you. And so it's starting with little things like that. One of the other things that we do is we'll grill at the front of the house. It's like if I'm out there and there's already neighbors, like, hey, I could throw some extra burgers on the grill if you guys want to come over or whatever. And it's like, sometimes it's like, what? But a lot of the neighbors, because we have over time invested in them, they know we're not like weirdos. They're like, yeah, I have potato salad, or I have chips, or whatever. And all of a sudden you just threw together a miniature block party. But that's what we're talking about, is just taking the first step of like, okay, we don't have to be weird. It didn't used to be weird to just wave at your neighbors. Like any of you that have grandparents, that's how it used to be. You drive through the neighborhood and your grandparents would do this like 96 times, just getting out of the neighborhood to every neighbor. It's always that. And now it's like, or you avoid it. Oh, we just made eye contact. And it's like, I don't know why we're doing that. We're completely disconnected. But so anyway, we want you guys, it's a short season where we are not hibernating. So it's like, we want you guys to come out and be a part of your community and engage with the people that are around you.
In her book, she talks about when she first put her picnic table, which is painted turquoise, in her front yard. And the first day she went out to sit at her table, she was pretty nervous because she knew she was probably going to be by herself. But she took her computer, she took her notepad, and she took a coloring book and crayons just in case someone came along with a child. Well, nobody showed up that day. And if I'm not mistaken, it was, she ended up at the end of the first week, I believe, calling a friend of hers to come and sit with her. So maybe her neighbors would see the idea. But during the time that she's waiting for other people to stop, she began to notice what was happening in her neighborhood. She noticed that there was a lot of people out walking their dogs. She noticed a lot of moms were out with their children taking a walk. And so she began to formulate this plan in her mind. She created these little baskets. One keeps toys, coloring books, and crayons in it for children. So when moms would stop, she would have something for the children to do. She also had a basket for pets. It would have doggy treats. She would have little cups that she could put water in for the dogs. She also always keeps a tin of cookies and nuts and bottles of water. Mm-hmm. So she's prepared. She's going to be intentional about this. And it wasn't long before people that made their normal walks, they would stop and talk to her. Mm-hmm. So this way she got to know, she knows all of her neighbors. She lives in a big subdivision. So she knows all of her neighbors now, but she also was able to identify the rhythm of her subdivision. Mm-hmm. And she noticed when a particular couple did not walk their dog, after a day or two, she would go knock on the door to find out what was wrong. And sure enough, the woman was sick or the man would be sick. So she would go home, fix them a pot of soup or something, and take it to them. Mm-hmm. So I want to encourage you, and I'm encouraging myself, to let's just try it. Mm-hmm. You know, what is it going to hurt if you're just sitting in your front yard? I have a young lady that she has 2 small children. I already asked her. She's in our mom's group at church, and I said, hey, I'm going to do this. Will you come and sit with me so I don't have to sit by myself? And so do that, you know. There's safety in numbers. And just go sit in your front yard and who knows? You have no idea what's going to happen and who's God's going to bring to your house.
Well, and just let's not overestimate or underestimate the simple either. I mean, there's something to be said about sitting in your front yard. If you're on your phone, that's probably not a very good invitation for somebody to walk up and introduce or engage in conversation. So, I mean, just those simple little things welcome the opportunity to being hospitable and just creating conversation amongst our neighbors or out camping or whatever we're doing this summer. Maybe set the phones down just a little additional time there.
Yeah, we were talking, when we were talking about this, I had mentioned when Shane and Megan were out of town, we had their boys. I took them over to McDonald's Playland to let them burn off some energy because it was still really cold. And so they're playing in the little playland, and I'm just watching because it's been a while since I had toddlers. It's fun to just see them zipping around. But I looked around and I was like, there are 5 other moms here, also with toddler-aged children, and every one of them's on their phone. And the kids, Mommy, look at it. Mommy, I did. Mommy, I did. And they don't even have a clue. They're just, and I'm like, that does not feel good to look at. And so similarly, like what you're talking about, if you're going to go outside and do this, be in it. Put your dumb phone away. We have gotten by for many years without being contacted 24/7. And kind of on that note, you train people what your availability is. If you are always on your phone and you always answer 24/7, people will continue to request things of you 24/7. So if you train people, hey, if I'm not answering, it's because I'm with my family or whatever, they can be trained to your schedule or whatever. But we have to get back to engaging with real life people that are with us right now. So, my 2 cents on that.
If I'm not mistaken, one of you correct me if I'm wrong, I think Kristen Shell designed an eye basket. And she leaves it sitting out, and that's where all the eye paraphernalia goes. And she said it's worked great so far. She even has one in her house.
I've heard of where people will do it on a table. If you go out to eat, you throw all the phones in the middle. Whoever grabs their phone first, you just bought dinner for the table. So
like that.
We can all go Dutch, or someone's going to treat us. You know, it's like, see how committed you are to that process, right?
I think for me, it's not, it's not necessarily difficult for me to talk to people, but going back to, what is the purpose and what is the intent? It's to, to introduce people to Jesus. And that is, I believe that, and I hope that I do that, but at the same time, I can't say that I've gone into situations thinking that intentionally. And so just, bringing that to the forefront again, and as we've been talking about this, that's just been on my heart so much about, okay, there are people that I have had connections with for years and years and years, and of course, they know I'm a Christian, or they know I go to church and whatever, but have I ever really asked them, do you know Jesus? And it's like, whoa, that's scary for me to even think about being that bold and to ask that question. Is that and we think, like, in today's society, we're like, oh, that would totally turn somebody off, they would just run screaming from me. But I don't know, would they? I think most people that I know would probably at least give me some sort of response. Even if it was a laughing response back, they would give me a response. But to just be, I just say that to encourage us to keep that at the top of our hearts and minds too, that it's all about Jesus and that people need him. and that, I live in this little sheltered world of confidence in my faith, and other people don't have that. And that's like, whoa, oh my goodness, okay, people don't have that. So how can I bring that to them? And it's great. It's one thing to entertain. It's one thing to, enjoy each other's company and to socialize, but do they know Jesus? And that's really, really been like strong on my heart since we've been talking about this.
Oh, Sherry. Yeah, I think, wasn't it Cammie that had the Where are you in your?
What was
or
your
was that
phrase? No, it was.
Years ago, I had heard one of our pastors share the way that he opens that conversation is he says, "Where are you at on your spiritual journey?" And that just allows for a variety of responses, whether there is none, whether it's different from yours, but they can just kind of talk freely about whatever that might be. That was a great opener.
And just trusting the Holy Spirit. You can tell when you're being called to say something, or maybe it's to not say something, where it's like they're dumping maybe a problem or a crisis on you, and it's like your gut reaction is like, solve the problem, and then but you can feel that like, I got nothing. Or it's like, I can think of 26 things right now that are available to you to help you. So just listening for whatever the Holy Spirit is trying to lead you to do or not do, I think is another. And we're a big see a need, meet a need. That's kind of our family mantra. Don't wait to be asked to do something. If you see that your neighbor is doing something, we have a lady that lives a few doors down that she's older but still very spry, and she's out there shoveling snow, which I don't love that. So if we see her out there, then we'll go help her do that. She doesn't ask us to do that. She's always grateful when we do, and she has no expectation of us doing that. But it's just seeing needs like that. Or a few days ago, our neighbors across the street, they've been renting out their house, and the people just left, and it's a mess. And so they had to repaint and do all of that stuff. And so they would not ask for help. I used to have a painting business. Will not ask for help painting. So I was like, okay, then what else am I going to do? So at the end of a long day, I was like, Dan, Lynn, are you guys starving? And they're like, yeah, we're probably going to go get something to eat. I was like, oh, my word, we just made extra burgers. And they're like, okay. And over they came, and we fed them. And so it's like, you can find it. They still have a need, and we're supposed to be able to give an answer for the hope that's in us, right? And so give them a reason to wonder about the hope that's in us and the joy that we have and the kindness that we show. Like, give them a reason to wonder about Jesus.
Well, they need to see a difference between us and the world. And if we don't show them, the world definitely will.
Yeah. And if our doors are closed, then what is the difference? They can't see any difference at all. Yeah. That's true.
Some of the things that we talked about, like if you are out camping or fishing, that you can do to be a neighbor or to meet your neighbors. I don't know about you, but when I go camping, I don't have a lot of neighbors. But occasionally there will be some people around. But we used to always take extra helmets if people went with us so they could ride with us or whatever, an extra fishing pole or two. We always took plenty of food so we could share with whoever, and lots of bottles of water. And we made sure that we had extra chairs that we could bring out anytime people wanted to join us around the campfire. So that's just a way of meeting some needs. You know, and sometimes, girls, we don't have to pray about meeting a need. You know, we already know that if there's a need that we can take care of, you don't have to go home and pray about it. You don't have to go and say, oh, God, should I fix that meal for that family that's hungry? You don't have to do that. You know, just if you're able to do it, just do it. They'll be so grateful. For sure.
I think, too, and I'm sure many women can relate to this, it seems like with the awkwardness of accepting help, that if you're wanting to offer or meet a need, you almost have to demand that you want to do it. And so I would just continue to encourage that, too. It's so awkward to receive help. And so like you said earlier, Camille, it's the other end of it is a little bit awkward, too. And so just making sure your approach is really selling them on the idea that you truly want to do this. And please, please let me do this for you. And just making it almost more of a demand than a, can I? If you're going to say no, it's too easy to say no.
That's the difference between like the asking yes or no questions or asking the open-ended, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Or what do you need or whatever, instead of like, do you need help with that? No. It's like, that's not what we're looking for.
No, that's so true. I mean, I myself am a terrible gift receiver. Like, I can give gifts all day long, but to receive them, I'm like, thank you. Like, I mean it, but it's just hard to accept, help
You're better. You're better.
Thank you. Over how many years?
Many.
Okay. But my neighbors, are a great example of that. So this week has been a really busy week for my family with our little tiny chef business, and we've had an event we've been preparing for, and there's been several nights that we didn't eat. And so just the other day, you know, she knew it was going to be busy. She called me and she's like, dinner is done. Come over. And it's literally across the yard. It's, 12 feet. But without that invitation, almost, and it was a demand, it wasn't really an invitation, that I never would have called and said, hey, can you help us out tonight? Like, we're struggling. We've only slept for an hour, whatever, She was like, come over, stop, come over and eat. And again, the distance was so short that it just seems silly sitting here talking and thinking about it that I wouldn't go over there. But it's like there's this invisible wall that just prevents us from reaching out. And so anyway, on the flip side of that, it was great to be the receiver of such a gift. And so having experienced that, I for sure want to take and give that blessing to somebody else.
Well, since we live in snow country and it's cold, I've been looking for some ideas, some ways that we could practice this in the winter when it's below 0 and 8 feet of snow. And so I went and looked at her website, and there was a lady that lives in Minnesota, and she was kind of in a similar situation. It was cold and snowy, and she began to look around her house for slightly used clothes like knit caps and gloves and scarves, maybe an extra jacket or a pair of snow pants. And she took them outside and put them on her fence and just left them there for the kids to use that forgot their hat, or maybe somebody walking around just needed them. And her neighborhood caught on to it. So now everybody in the neighborhood brings all of their extra stuff and puts them on her fence. And the people know just to go get them if you need them. I thought that was pretty cool.
Cute.
Thank you for listening. You can find us on Facebook at Living Well Radio. Also, visit our website, akchristianwomensministry.com.